Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, Anna Dana, head of growth at Saas Group, a serial acquirer of buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. And here I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business a success. So today with me is Gil, founder and CEO of Metadata, a B2B marketing platform that is designed to make marketing strategies more efficient and effective. And as a marketer, I would say, who doesn't want that? So, welcome to the show. Great to see you here.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
Sure. So, before we go any further and talk about the product, I would love to maybe get a bit of a background story about you, who you are, how did you come to being a founder in the first place?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Israel. I always wanted to be a founder. I think the first time I guess did any kind of business was getting firecrackers from friends, hiding it in my backpack, and then selling it for like 10x, 15x. I don't remember. It was really it's a crazy markup to some kids in the neighborhood, mostly in the school, the more affluent ones, and then selling it to stores. So I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I had a computer fixing business later. But the dream was to start a software company in the US. And so I started working towards that at around 21, 22 years old. I did my MBA. I was a robotics engineer, I should mention, in my previous career, robotics engineer and AI and a bunch of other stuff. But life after MBA was marketing. And I got to my first job was a company called Spotfire in Boston. And my boss told me, look, your job is to do this, product marketing. You have to write these specs and do these projects. You're going to get bored. So this is another project for you. If you fail, no one cares. You're not getting any budget. But if you succeed, you're green MBA, like try it out. And he must have knew me because I took that opportunity. And I remember I made my roommate, who was an SDR, was a salesperson for this mini company. Like the secretary, Deborah, was the billing manager. And basically, we started a small business within this startup and grew it to like 1.5 million in like a year and a half. So it was meaningful. And after that, I was hooked. I was like, I want to start something just like this on my own. And so after I spent a few more years being a VP of marketing, I realized the gap between what's possible to automate and actually do completely automated and what's available. And so I had to take the shot.
Okay, sounds great. So, okay, I did a bit of a description of what metadata is, but what is it for you? What was it intended to be for you? And what is the problem that it's solving?
So as a marketer, being an engineer, I'm no Don Draper. This is not Midman. I was not coming up with like cool campaigns and drinking whiskey. It wasn't happening. So for me, it was how do I make sure I have data that is accurate so I don't spend my time and dollars on the wrong companies, on the wrong people. And the second one is how do I figure out how to generate pipeline for sales? Because basically, I realized after a while, this is my job. I may have other fancy titles and responsibilities, but at the end of the day, if my VP of sales has enough pipeline or more to close revenue, I'm doing great. So I focus on that, and that's what the software does. It intends to replace an agency, a demand generation agency, or a demand generation army, and you're able to, with one operator, essentially create a very scalable operation where it runs tens of thousands of campaigns for you and automatically optimizes for pipeline and revenue. You don't have to like log into Facebook or Google or LinkedIn or Instagram, Twitter, or any of those. It automatically logs in for you, executes for you, and optimizes for you. And because it's connected to all of your systems, instead of optimizes towards things that are like vanity metrics, like a click or a lead. Here, you optimize towards pipeline that closes into revenue. So something they talk about in the board meeting. That's essentially the concept for metadata. And as we build it, there is more and more automation coming into it. Today, we offer a team of demand generations, one per account, that helps them set it up.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But you mentioned that yeah, you were able to generate a million and a half in a pretty short period of time. So how did you validate the idea, and how did you go to your first users, potential customers, trying to sell this? Because well, everyone talks about like, oh, we got first customers. How do you get them to talk to you in the first place?
In one word, I would say obsession. When you're at a stage where you have no customers, you have what you think is a product, which is probably a lie. At least in our case, it was like a few screens and us doing some work in the back. and everyone knew it's like mostly services. There's like 5% software, but they see that you're a domain expert and you're willing to hustle. And I think that's how you get business. I would say all of the first time customers were people I knew or people I knew through uh, my network. So a day after I resigned as a VP of marketing at Qball, I went to my boss and told him, hey, hire me as a contractor. And he did, Ashish. And that was my first customer. Second one was a partner we worked with. You know, so it just went like that. It wasn't always easy, of course. Sometimes you would have to go and try for like 3 months, like 7, 8, 9, 10 meetings until you get a deal. But every one of them was just like random from reaching out on LinkedIn. So I think if you show up every morning and you spend the hours on a task, it will happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to ask you about the way, obviously, your customer acquisition has been changing over the years. But first, because you mentioned that you dropped out this good job, right? You were a VP of marketing into, well, basically the unknown, something new, a new venture that you started. How did you know that this is something, worth pursuing? Because I think a lot of people kind of want to, especially if they're developers, leaving their job and like trying to develop that code into business is challenging. You have to be prepared for it. What was the tipping point for you?
I mean, what's the alternative? Everything is challenging. I prefer challenging, I'm living the dream and it's difficult versus challenging, I'm regretting every day that I'm not trying to live my dream. So in general, I think the alternative, the opportunity cost is there. But I've done that change a few times before, right? When I was an engineering manager, I was making great money back in Israel, very secured career, but I left that to take two loans to pay $100,000 to some American institution so I can have an MBA next to my name. And so those things are investment in yourself. I think always the best idea to invest in yourself. And for me, I think freedom is something that I get from being an entrepreneur that I can't get anywhere else. So it took, I think, 4 years to get to the salary, or 5 years to get to the salary that I had before. I think I counted it, slowly getting to the same salary. But uh, first of all, that was history that by past. So overall, long term, it's worth it. And also, just the difference in you wake up every morning and you make things happen. You work for yourself to an extent on your idea and on your passion trumps everything, because even the difficult days are kind of like a game that you have to win to an extent. And it's very hard to replicate when you're in some sort of a 9 to 5 with a ceiling, with politics being more important than merit. So to me, that's and you can't get that somewhere else.
Right, makes sense. Okay, then back to the customers. First customers were in your network, kind of people you knew or people who knew you. How has it been changing over the years? What's the biggest acquisition channel right now?
Well, we do use advertising, so we use our own software quite a bit. I would say about 40%, 50%, probably 50% of our pipeline comes through our software, which is cool because we have tested it probably 5, 6 times where we have complete control over the pipeline coming. Of course, you have to pay more for it, but that's an area that is very predictable. And then the rest comes from a lot of content and branding. That's something that we invested in earlier and it's totally worth it. Um, and then the community. We have a nice active community of a few thousand B2B marketers.
Okay, could you talk a little bit more about the content that you're producing and what works the best for you?
Style wise, first and foremost, authenticity and value creation. So not asking a million things before you read a post or a benchmark report, what have you. So that's just a style. Ungated, ideally, if you can, or ungated at least after 2 weeks of promotion. And transparency, that's in terms of the style. In terms of the content itself, I would say how to tutorials. So just like what channel is working right now, how much does it cost me, how can I put it together without buying your software, right? The whole idea is that you come for content
Yeah.
without having to spend the money. Playbooks, by other customers are very popular. So other customers who have done something smart and it worked for them, we want to replicate it. They talk about the entire playbook and how they execute it, like user gems guy. And then if you have any thought provoking concept that's interesting, like the one that you're probably going to talk about in a moment, but anything really about found like CEOs and VPs of marketing, the relationship between them. That's an interesting topic. The relationship between VPs of sales and VPs of marketing. These kind of topics where you change the story that usually you read on TechCrunch is interesting
Mhm.
to people.
Right. And well, it's really interesting. For me, it was great that you started talking about the way you're doing it, not just what you're doing, because obviously I went to your LinkedIn and went through a bunch of posts, and it really aligns with what you're saying. There's a lot of transparency, and well, I always start the podcast by asking like, what is a no-go? What should I not ask? And well, you said everything is a go, and I feel like it aligns with what you're putting out there in the social media. So yeah, transparency is really something that people love. Okay, let's go down that road a little bit more. So you've been I want to throw another question about full transparency and maybe building your brand as well, because well, you have like 30 something thousand followers on LinkedIn. How have you started building your brand, and how does it help with metadata and what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I started this maybe a year and a half ago actively. So it was all organic. And about a year and a half ago, I started realizing because I noticed mentions of posts or things like that, where the podcast I used to have in sales calls on Gong, salespeople would tell me about this. And so that created kind of a trigger. They said, okay, this is helpful. They can see it all the way to the field. Uh, Once I chose topics that I care about a lot, I don't have to plan time to think about LinkedIn posts. I don't have to plan time to like create content. I just think about it all the time anyway. And so those topics like founder journey, founder psychology, working with investors, getting in tough times, recession handling, those topics um, I like to write about. And the other side of it is when I started putting together that content, kind of like without too much thinking, just like write it down, even if it's not perfect language, etc. I noticed that there is a good reaction to it. Like you said, people like transparency and authenticity, and so I started doing that. It worked out, and then I contacted Dave Gerhardt, if you know, Exit Five, I think is the name of his company,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
he's very good at this. He writes content all the time. He gave me great tips, and he would work with me every week to kind of increase that. And today I work with another person called Filipa Canela. So now I actually work with professionals who make sure that the post goes to 5 places, that it's well formed, maybe some good digital image next to it. So a little bit more sophisticated than a year and a half ago, but still very very basic.
Super cool. Would you actually recommend founders, especially earlier stages founders, do that and really invest time in their brand?
Million percent. And not just post about the product, and definitely post about the product, but also post things that you're doing. Everyone, if your customer is a founder, for your customer, or if your customer is a B2B marketer, think what else does a B2B marketer needs to do that you may not sell to him or to her, but you still want to provide as value. For example, when we did our demand model to figure out how much pipeline we have to generate in order to hit this particular MRR goal, our marketer built this like sophisticated spreadsheet. I was like, awesome, great spreadsheet. Put it on LinkedIn, and he did. And people were like downloading it and asking questions, and that is, I think, how you build a following. You provide something of value, you build yourself a credibility as a professional, as an expert, and then when you have a product, people will give it a shot.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's get back to the product and the company and how you're doing it. And one thing we kind of talk a lot here, especially lately, is pricing and how to do pricing, who owns it, and everything about it, because somehow it's such a sensitive topic. And obviously, I went to metadata website, and on your pricing page, there is just this one image that says it starts from $5,000. And I was like, okay, that's such a cool thing. Like, if I'm a smaller company and I don't really have 5K or more to spend, well, that's not for me. Then, I'm gonna go and find something else probably. Uh, and yeah, I really wanted to ask you like why you decided that this is going to be like one message, right away decide if it's not for you. How does it affect your pipeline? And if you're tracking any data, like how many people, what is the percentage of people that say, well, this is not for me, when they leave your pricing page?
Yeah. Let me first say, there are a bunch of topics that I feel like I have a good amount of knowledge in. Pricing is not yet one of them. I'm still struggling trying to figure out the best pricing model. Just being fully honest, this is not something that I think we've sold as a company in general, because we try to be super transparent and err towards the benefit for the customer. And then we don't operate in a silo. We work with other companies. Good luck finding a dollar number in any pricing page of any of our competitors. You go there, there's like contact us, schedule a demo, and there is no dollar price on the pricing page. So, but on the other hand, it's really hard to come up with something that is the best for your company financially. So that's why I'm saying I'm still struggling on that topic. But I definitely have lots of opinions and some data. So first of all, I like to make it very simple for someone to know ahead of time before they spend 25 minutes with an SDR, 15 minutes, whatever, if we're even in the range or not. So if a customer comes to me and tells me I have $1,000 to spend on ad spend every month, I have $2,000 advertising budget, I'm like, that's great. Try MetaMatch. By the way, we do have a product that is a free trial that costs like $300 per month. So we do have something for small businesses. It's like as what they need for much lower, but we probably need to do a better job promoting that on the website if you didn't know. But in general, if a customer comes to me and they're like, only have 3K, I'm like, I will give them advice how to spend those 3K most effectively and tell them not to pay any vendor. Definitely not to me, but not also to other customers, because some other vendors will tell you, oh, you should spend 3,000 to 3,000 to manage 3,000. They'll totally convince you to do that, and some people will buy it. And then that was a big financial mistake. They should spend the money as much as possible in the actual raw ads coming out and not managing them. And so we learned earlier that we were not a good customer until we were at a certain size. And so we want every customer that starts working with us to get a return on their investment. We want them to realize how exponential growth they get from it. And if they don't have a certain volume, it doesn't make any sense, not financially. And also, the change is just not interesting enough. Even if you cut, even let's say you double the pipeline or you cut the customer acquisition cost by 30%. If you spend $1 million a year, that's 300K. Interesting. Uh, 10 million, this three, you spend 10 million, that's 3 million savings per year. This is, material. But if you spend 100K, that's not very material. And so, for these reasons and statistical significance with the experimentation, we realize what is an ideal customer. So yes, it definitely reduces the pipeline, but then we take the logos that visit those pages, we retarget them, and we start. There is more work we need to do for sure, but we can offer them other, either content, either Spotlight, which is the attribution tool, either MetaMatch, or other products. The other the other thing the other thing that we do is, by having this pricing right away, we also simplify the decision. It's not like you have million kind of options. We want the person to kind of, okay, this is within the range. Let's start the conversation. Let's see what they have to offer, versus go too much back and forth. One of the issues I had as a buyer is with no pricing. I know that they're waiting to learn about me to figure out what price to give me, and that's bullshit. You should have idea of what the pricing is as a vendor, and as a buyer you should have an idea of what you're willing to pay. It should be ideally on the table, building trust, and not trying to screw with each other for like two weeks cycle. So for all those reasons, I'm a big proponent of put the pricing page. It doesn't matter what your price is, put it out there, try to be transparent, and when you do the sales, try to have price integrity. Not easy to do. Talk to me in a year, maybe I'll be more intelligent.
Okay, well, it's okay. So, yeah, about that. So I wanted to throw it in as well, but when you started talking about pricing and how customers might see the value. So How long does it take until that aha moment for your customers?
Until they see value.
Yeah.
Uh, I would say ROI comes usually, we should be able to show ROI in month 4, assuming that most of our customers' deal cycle is around 2 months, 3 months. So, even if you generate the best demo request in the world, it's going to take 3 months for them to materialize into revenue. So that's usually some of the delay. But they can start seeing value, I would say, from month 1, because if you already have, let's say you have 100 campaigns, not a lot. Company, let's say $20 million in revenue, 100 campaigns is not a crazy number. 50 campaigns is not a crazy number. People have to manage these campaigns every day. They have to wake up, they have to take a look at a few different screens, and Salesforce report, Marketo report, what have you, maybe Google Analytics, combine it into some domo. They have to do this work in the middle of the night, wake up, change a UTM tag because they put the question mark instead of exclamation mark. That shit happens all the time with campaigns and campaign teams and demand generation teams. It's a nightmare, and we take that nightmare away immediately. The campaigns are now migrated into this command and control system. There is a decision tree that is made out of machine learning models and heuristics that takes care of all of that. It budgets it for you, make sure you don't go above a certain limit, spreads the campaigns 4 or 5 times a day, checks on them, maybe even more, and takes all the actions for you, knowing that what you care about is the KPI that you chose. Usually it's pipeline, but it could be cost per lead, cost per MQL, revenue, brand awareness. You can choose, and it will optimize towards getting you the most for that particular goal. So that becomes an immediate benefit. Another immediate benefit is the targeting. Um, so, for example, it will eliminate campaigns that don't perform. So that's a benefit right there. But it also expands your reach. If in the past you were able to only run campaigns on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is the only one that gave you sophisticated B2B targeting, with metadata you have the same and more advanced targeting, and you can apply it to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, channels that historically were not friendly for B2B marketers. But now you go after exactly the same people because we use their personally identifiable information. And so you guarantee that you get the same person on a different channel, usually for a lot less. Because how many people are chasing like CISOs on Facebook? But they're there. They do their own thing on Facebook. But you find them and you put an ad, they're going to click, and it's going to cost you, a third or half the price. So those are immediate advantages if you can, if you activate them on time.
Right. Okay, so I wanted to go back to pricing. I'm sorry about that. But
That's
yeah,
okay.
because you have AI, right? It's you have AI features and well, again, something that we've talked here a lot about is how to price AI features or how to build in the AI features into your existing pricing. How did you go about this?
Another area where we're still figuring it out, right? The way we're thinking about it right now is we open it up to like a cohort of customers, like the beta customers, first of all, to see the value. We learn the use cases, which is the stage we're in right now with the new product we're releasing. And then we assess the value of that use case, more or less. I can tell you that with the generative AI features we had and shut down within 2 quarters, we were thinking about volume there, and it was not a good idea. So anyone considering pricing generative AI features in their product, don't do it volume based. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a trend, the whole like the AI in your product, because AI can be a million different things. We've had it since the beginning, the heuristics, but there is a whole new paradigm coming up with autonomous AI agents, where you're actually hiring a digital clone of a human that is able to do things that we're able to do, right? Like run campaigns, give you answers, marketing answers, so on and so forth. And that's going to be interesting because you're essentially, renting a digital version of a worker. How the hell do you price that? And so that
You
that is
are
an
taking
upcoming.
someone's job.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm the first to say, when we started the company, the first customer, I think the first customer we had didn't like the idea of someone taking, a piece of software taking their job. Of course, who wants that? Most people don't like that. And so he, was a classic marketer, like three screens open, spreadsheets and shit, everything just like, crazy scientist. And I was that person before, so I get it. I could relate. But he said, no, that doesn't work. This is gonna work better. CEO is like, sounds good. compete with the system. You have 3 months. Let's see what goes. And in 3 months, system did better, and the person was fired. And I realized that moment that we have a big problem. Like if we don't get marketers to adopt this and realize that with this they can get promoted like crazy, hit their bonuses and exceed them, which happens time after time with customers that adapt AI, it's going to be an issue. At first, we were kind of trying to be soft. It empowers, it does this, it does. Today, we're pretty obvious about it. It replaces agencies, it replaces organizations that are inefficient and have conflict of interest with yours. So we don't get paid by the percentage of spend. So we have no interest in getting the customers to spend more every month. No, depends. If it makes sense for the pipeline, for the revenue, great. If not, no. And so there are a few things that are a little different. So yes, we take the job, but we take the jobs for organizations that we think don't add value, and we take the types of tasks that are soul crushing. We don't take like the tasks that are you wake up in the morning and it's like I can't wait to change 1,000 UTM tags today. I'm looking forward to checking 7 screens and joining columns on spreadsheet for like 3 hours. No one is looking forward to these tasks. And those are the tasks that the system does much better than a human. The pieces where the person gets creative, like creating content, coming up with campaign ideas, creatives, all of that is great. Keep doing that. But the technical, repetitive, mundane tasks, we want to take over those.
Okay. All right. So, talking about taking away some of the roles and some of the parts of the job, you recently announced that you're killing your customer success and introducing marketing services. I guess that's what you were talking about at the beginning. So, what does it mean? And why did you feel that it was the right move? And if you see any changes already?
I start with the end. Yes, we are already hitting the goals. The second set of goals. So we're hitting our initial goals. Then we set up higher goals, and we're hitting the second one already. So it's proving to be great. A great change, not without challenges, of course, but great change. The reason we did this is, look, as a software engineer, I want everything to just be like you click on this piece of software, just like Apple kind of product. You click, you get what you were dreaming of immediately. That's the best case scenario. Unfortunately, the reality doesn't work that way, and our software doesn't really work well unless you have a certain level of marketing strategy and marketing and demand generation knowledge, because you can get a monster to like do what you want, like a big robot to do what you want, but if you're giving it the different, not the good instructions, it's going to create havoc. And so we realize that with good to great marketing skills, you can really crush it with our system, make your marketing unit a profit unit. It's a predictable profit unit. It's possible, and it's happening with so many of our customers. But many who don't know what to do, uh, it's not a magic. There's no like a magic bullet that it just happens. It's not the case. And so after a while of doing customer success, joining calls, training, doing advocacy, meeting, doing some status checks, we realize many customers want the work to be done for them. They don't they don't want to manage this system. They want to get in, look in that everything is working well, but they don't necessarily want to operate it, especially because it's fairly technical. It's like multivariate experimentation and stuff like that that not everyone is excited about. The scientists, absolutely, but not everyone. And so we decided to make that move, and it was a hard transition because it's an organizational change. These are always hard, but by the end of it, customers are raving about it, results are up the roof, and our team now gets to be top 1% VP marketing in the market. Like they get to work with the Drifts, Gainsights, Cisco, Zoom, most sophisticated brands. Of course, some middle market companies that are growing really fast, and that's very interesting. And so that combination works really well. Doing it versus talking about doing it or recommending you how to do it. The second part is as we build our system more and more, that feedback loop that comes fast now from our own team gets into the product right away. So for those two reasons, uh, it's been proven to be a good move.
Okay. I think lots of founders could be a bit intimidated by adding service to the product because,
Hmm.
well, that's something that a lot of people were trying to get away from. And well, apparently it's not scalable. So how are you dealing with that, well, supposedly a challenge?
Well, there's a perceived challenge. So the main reason, in my opinion, that people are afraid of adding services is because, and when I say people, I mean venture-backed founders. The main reason is because they have board members that don't like this idea because they would like as fast of an exit as possible. And if the services percentage in the balance sheet becomes too high, the multiple on this company becomes lower. That is the perception. It's especially an important perception for a bubble market, which thankfully we're not in one anymore. In this reality check that we're getting right now, this statement is not so much true anymore because board members want their company to survive and be profitable, and services is revenue. It might not be 70% margin revenue, but it's 20%, 15% margin revenue potentially. And so I think that is one. And if you are the CEO and you want to make a decision to make your company profitable, and you'll take care and make sure that the company is still a software company and gets the multiple of a software company, then do it. Don't worry about it, and people will go after your decision. Um, in general, that's how I feel about it. The second thing is by doing professional services, we're increasing the GRR. By increasing the GRR, the gross retention, the ARR increases, and therefore the multiples increase as well. So it's a natural byproduct of doing what makes sense. Maybe not popular, but makes sense.
Okay, absolutely. So since you started talking about the exit and ARR and all the metrics that, well, we at SaaS Group very much care about, are you building with an exit in mind? Is that something that is on the line, or is it just something that you're toying with because, well, there are board members that, and it's kind of a given that there will be an exit?
No one knows the future, and I would say I'm constantly working to build the company to be a high growth, self sufficient company. So high retention, healthy unit economics, good profit margin, healthy growth. That's the first task. That's like my bread and butter job. I have to make sure that happens. And I'm working on that constantly, and we're right on path for that. That said, there is a bigger goal, which is if I was to start a company today and compete with me, what would I do? And that's the long-term vision that we're working on, and that has a big, a big outcome potential. I'm not, we probably had something like 14 acquisition, 15 acquisition offer at this point in terms of interest. I would say the moment the company, I see the company as a healthy, self-sufficient, we get all the KPIs that I'm looking to have, then every conversation is fair. Of course, if there's an offer that gives you something that is 4 years, 3 years, 5 years down the path, and you save that time, you create some comfortable for yourself and for your team. Not everyone, people are working for like 6, 7 years. They're down for a prize. That's cool. That's absolutely a great outcome. And if we're able to create some sort of a relief, but continue, get more funding and do more of a blitz scale because we have some crazy idea that takes over the world, that's cool too.
Okay. All right. Since you started talking about the team, right? Well, the team makes the company, right? And you've recently posted this great post about the importance of cultural fit in the team. So I wanted to ask you what you prioritize during hiring, and how do you ensure that there is this cultural fit and alignment in within the company?
So first, let me just say that if you and I would talk about 5 years ago, I would not mention the world culture, and if we would, I would make a small, internal laugh in my stomach because I didn't think it's important at all. And
Okay.
today, I think it's the most important. And so, cliches aside, when I interview a candidate, it's usually at the end. I test for some of the traits to see if they're going to be a cultural fit. So things like authenticity, super important. Honesty, kindness, hustle culture, direct communication, bar raiser. Every person ideally raises us in one thing. They're a better communicator, better organized, meetings better, whatever it is. Um, and self growth. So growth mindset, the person that is looking to be different and better year in, year out. Um, yeah, so we have, I think, our list of like 9, if I'm not mistaken, values. We check for them legit, like by examples, stories, behavior. I like to test the behavior of a person, not just the answers that they give me. Those things usually help. You can't, of course, be 100%, but by doing those things, I think you can figure out the fit. Because if the culture fit is there, of course, they have to have some basic experience. But if the culture fit is there, the rest usually follows, and that is the most stable thing you can bet on versus diplomas. I don't know, things like that matter less.
Okay, what has changed in you that, 5 years ago it was no culture matters, and now, the team and the culture is all you can think of?
I mean, not everything I can think of, and not all I can think of, but a lot of
Sorry.
it.
I
No, no, it's all
understand.
good. Let's see what changed. I think I became less cynical. That's a big one. So if you hire people who are good people, they're honest, they're accountable, they work hard, they're authentic, they're genuine, they're smart, and something doesn't work, you don't go into like, oh, it's the wrong person. It is the right person. You just, maybe you fucked up, maybe you said something wrong, maybe you mismanaged them. And so I love that part. I love when I have great people, because when things don't work, I can be half certain that I'm fucking up at this moment, and I should look into to see what am I doing wrong. Versus the usual more common, when you don't work with like the exact people you want to work with, it's different. You're like, well, they didn't do the work, they're not putting enough hours, they didn't have attention to details, they didn't take accountability on their mistakes, they're defensive, all these other things that happen. So by having great people, I am we just move so much faster. We give each other the benefit of the doubt. Also, people love working with other smart people. That is something that I've learned, time and time again. When I was reading the reviews in Glassdoor or the other places, I saw that people, we do a poll survey every month to see the health of people. People love working with other people that they learn from, and if they're kind and they actually help them get to the next level, that's just very very healthy. For those main reasons, and noticing that bringing the right culture people also, they own something from start to finish. You don't have to. It's not It's more fun to go to battle. It's not like you have to drag people that they're constantly unhappy. No, these are people who are happy to wake up in the morning, work hard, get so much better economically and personality wise, and that's fun. I think it's really empowering to be in a group like that is like-minded. It's very different than one another. Don't super different cultures and people. Everything is very. Besides that part, everyone's a hustler. Everyone wants to work hard. They're smart as hell, and that's cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about you? What's in the, I think, 8 years of metadata? Uh, what have you learned that was challenging but you grew to love?
A lot of things I grew to love. I used to hate fundraising, love fundraising. I enjoy managing and leading. I enjoy, I listen to my intuition much more these days. I think I'm more spiritual, more empathetic to an extent. Yeah, I think I changed quite a bit because of this experience.
Okay. All right. So the last couple of questions are the usual ones that I always ask on the podcast.
Okay.
First one is, what's your biggest win so far and the biggest failure? And it could be for you as a leader or for the company.
Biggest win, biggest failure.
Yes.
Okay. Biggest win, resurrecting ourselves multiple times. One time from being like weeks away from cash death, from being out of runway, to like profitability, then raise a round, then raise a follow up round. I think that is at least what I talk about on stage. So it must be one of the ones I'm most proud of. Um, so I'll take that one. Failures, plenty. But I think the biggest failure personally for me, let me talk about my failures. It's mismanagement, either mismanagement of people or mismanagement of myself with people. That's, I guess, the biggest failure.
Okay. All right. So the last one is a hack. And again, can be anything related to whatever area of business, can be whatever helps you, which is, maybe a bit unconventional.
Yeah, unconventional is my middle name. So I would say life hack is psychedelics. Strongly encourage people to try that. It shoots you into the uncomfort zone where you can just shrink a year into a day in terms of your personal growth. So strongly recommend that. If you're afraid of substances, and that's natural, that's okay, I would say do another activity that limits your brain to focus on either nothing or one thing. For example, jujitsu, for me, gives me that calmness where I'm not thinking about work for an hour and a half, and all I'm thinking about is not getting choked. And that's great because I'm super, like, just super relaxed during that time. And afterwards, I'm happy. I mean, I'm noticing my communication skills before and after are quite different. So that's my biggest life hack: to find an activity that is ideally puts you in the in uncomfort zone, that you can not focus on your usual stuff and you have to change your behavior for a certain amount of time, so that you see life, you zoom out and you can see life for what it is versus be stuck in a very particular thought loop that most of us are in most of the day. That is the biggest life hack I can offer.
Okay, I think that's very new to the list of hacks that we've had here. So thanks so much for offering those. But yeah, it's been a great conversation. I think you've offered like so much to really think about for other founders. So thank you for this. And yeah, happy to do it again next year and see who owns pricing, where you're at next year with metadata.
Sounds good.
Thank you and
Thank
take
you for
care.
having me.